Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Oh, go ahead, Charlie.
Whenever you'd like me to give the instructions on the hand raise, just let me know.
All right. Oh, yeah. Thank you. I'll get to. You can just add that into during the. I'll let you know, Shelley.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Welcome to the January 27th, 2022 board meeting. My name is Sung-Oh, President of the board. Before we convene, I would like to remind everyone present that the board is a consumer protection agency charged with administering and enforcing pharmacy law. Where protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. This meeting is being conducted consistent with the provisions of Government Code Section 11133. Participants watching the webcast will only be able to observe the meeting. Anyone interested in participating in the meeting must join the WebEx meeting. Information and instructions are posted on our website. As I facilitate this meeting, I will announce when we're accepting public comments. I have advised the meeting moderator to allow 2 minutes to each individual providing comments. This approach is necessary to facilitate this meeting. Before we get started, I would like to ask staff moderating the meeting to provide general instructions. Moderator?
Thank you. For today's public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature. You will hear me refer to it as the Q&A. When public comment is called, I will display the following slide, which will provide instructions, and I will also provide verbal instructions. To request a public comment, you will need to find that Q&A icon on your screen. Looks like a question mark inside of a square and is typically located in the bottom right corner. Once you locate that, if you click on it, it will open a text box. In that text box, you can type the word comment and submit that to our panelists. We will be taking comments in the order that they are received today. When I call on your name for public comment, I will let you know that I've sent a request to unmute your microphone. At that time, you should see a pop-up appear at your end with the blue unmute me button that you will need to click in order to unmute your microphone. The first time you unmute your microphone today, it might play a recording. You'll need to wait till that recording stops before you begin speaking. Otherwise, it will cut off the beginning of your comment. As a reminder, we will be allowing 2 minutes for comments today. I will be providing a 15-second reminder when your time is about to expire. Once your time has expired, I will let you know and mute your microphone, moving on to our next commenter. And with that, I will turn the floor back over to the president.
Thank you, Shelley. Before I take a roll call, I would like to announce that the board will be postponing agenda item 7, which is the presentation on standard of care. Due to unforeseen circumstances that occurred after the release of the agenda, the presentation will not be provided today. I would encourage all interested stakeholders to attend the March 9th, 2022 meeting. As that meeting approaches, additional information will be provided. Thank you, everyone. And I would also like to welcome our newest member, Kula Koenig. We are very excited to have you on board. Welcome to the Board of Pharmacy, and looking forward to working with you, Kula.
Thank you.
Of course, thank you. And I would like to take a roll call to establish a quorum. Members, as I call your name, please remember to open your line before speaking. Maria, Serpa?
Licensee member present.
Hi, Maria, thank you. Jake Patel?
Present.
Hi, Jake, thank you. Cheryl Butler?
Here.
Thank you, Cheryl. Jose de la Paz? Don't think Jose is joining us today. Shirley Kim?
Here.
Thank you, Shirley. Kula Koenig?
Here.
Thank you, Kula. Ricardo Sanchez? I know Ricardo was here, so.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Oh,
I said
here
here.
you go.
Okay.
Thank you, Ricardo. And Nicole Tebow?
Here.
Thank you, Nicole. Debbie Veal?
Here. Excuse me,
Thank
here.
you, Debbie. Thank you, Debbie. And Jason Wise? I don't believe Jason is joining us today. And I am here, so the quorum has been established. Members, we have a full agenda for our meeting over the next 2 days. I truly appreciate all of your time and commitment to the board and California consumers. I ask everyone participating today to be respectful of the work before the board today. We encourage participation by members of the public throughout our meetings at appropriate times, and the board respectfully requests that when comments are provided, they are done so in a professional manner consistent with how the board conducts its business. I will now ask the moderator to open the line for individuals to provide public comment. You're not required to identify yourself, but may do so. As we open the lines, I would like to remind everyone that the board cannot take action on these items except to decide whether to place an item on a future agenda. Members, following review of the public comments for this agenda item, I will ask members to comment on what, if any, items should be placed on a future agenda. As a reminder, this agenda item is not intended to be a discussion, rather an opportunity for members of the public and members of the board and members of the public to request consideration of an item for future placement on an agenda, at which time discussion may occur. Moderator, please open the line for public comments.
This is the moderator. We've opened that Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on that Q&A icon on your screen. Type comment into the text field and submit that to our panelists. Our first comment today comes from Sandra Martinez. Sandra, I've sent the request to unmute your microphone.
Hello.
We can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for your time. In December of last year, the Board of Pharmacy enacted a regulation that cut off the supply of alpha lipoic acid, H2O2, and DMPS for intravenous use by only allowing pharmaceutical grade source materials. These source materials do not exist anywhere in the universe, thus eliminating the entire supply in California. I don't know if you understand the pain and suffering you're causing with this regulation. What are you telling the thousands of Californians who now have to permanently suffer with diabetes, chronic pain, diabetic neuropathy, liver disease, chronic illness, and other metabolic disorders that were really helped with these medicines? People either have to suffer with their condition now, or if they have the time and money, they have to go out of state or even out of the country to get the treatment. These medicines are effective for many conditions where other medicines fail. These medicines have impeccable safety records. I've found 0 reported problems from these medicines. The FDA finds that nutritional source materials are safe for these medicines and does not require pharmaceutical source materials. The effects of enforcing this regulation is increased pain and suffering of not only thousands of Californians, but also increased suffering of many who live out of state, whose doctors were supplied by California manufacturers. So I'm asking you, please remove these regulations and help safeguard the health of Californians. Give them access to these safe and effective medicines and restore quality of life. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next commenter is Lanny Dong. Lanny, I have sent the request to unmute your microphone. I've sent the request again. I see that you're unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me now?
We can.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Lonnie Dong, and my comments today are my own, and I am not speaking on behalf of my employer. I am a practicing pharmacist, part of a grassroots movement called Pizza is Not Working. We currently have over 20 state teams across the country working jointly to meet with our respective boards, most recently our Kentucky team yesterday. This movement started when pharmacists began voicing high-level concerns of being unable to effectively and confidently protect our patients under the current working conditions and understaffing crisis. The response was pizza. Our state grassroots team highly encouraged filing complaints to the board, but the resounding response was fear of retaliation by their employer. Part of the board's mission statement, quote, protects and promotes the health and safety of Californians by pursuing the highest quality of pharmacist care, end quote. So in other words, pharmacy safety risks are patient safety risks. The global pandemic is worsening work conditions at an alarming rate. Just 6 days ago, there was an article reporting that long pharmacy wait times were sending patients back to the hospital. We feel this is an urgent patient safety issue and humbly ask for quick action. In our joint commitment to public safety, we respectfully request the board to place an item on an upcoming agenda of the Enforcement and Compounding Committee to discuss and consider ways to protect pharmacists and pharmacy staff against forms of retaliation, similar to the Federal Whistleblower Act. We would also like to request an item be placed on an upcoming agenda of the Legislation and Regulation Committee to discuss and consider a long-term solution, such as a pharmacist bill of rights that correlates with and builds upon the one put forth by the American Pharmacists Association. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And our next comment comes from Sean Borndal. Sean, I've sent the request to unmute your microphone.
Hello, Shelley, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you, sorry.
It's okay.
Dear board, my name is Sean Bjorndal and I'm a practicing pharmacist participating in the Pizzas Not Working movement with Lonnie Duong. My comments today are my own and I am not speaking on behalf of my employer. Our California team put together an informal survey regarding fear of retaliation for reporting violations in the workplace. This survey received over 1,000 responses in just 2 weeks. 2 questions we asked were, do you want to submit complaints to your state board of pharmacy regarding your workplace conditions? And 2, are you dissuaded from making such complaints due to fear of retaliation from your employer? Of the 972 licensed personnel submissions, 87% responded wanting to submit a complaint. Of those, 89 said yes regarding fear of retaliation. For those in California, it was a 92% and 91% respectively. We understand our results have not been validated. However, we view it more as a barometer. With this small sample and considering the data from the California Board of Pharmacy Workforce Survey, one may infer these results may apply to a larger population. Furthermore, initial results from the APHA and NASPA National Pharmacy Workplace Survey stated there is no open mechanism for pharmacists and pharmacy personnel to discuss workplace issues with supervisors and management. If they try, the discussion is not welcomed or heard. They also identified issues including concern due to insufficient and ill-trained staff and addition of services with inadequate support to these services. This collectively is indicative of a critical climate in pharmacies that needs to be addressed urgently in order to protect both pharmacy staff and our patients. I support the comments and requests made by my colleague, Dr. Lonnie Duong. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next comment comes from Raj Rakolia. Raj, I've sent the request to unmute your microphone.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, my name is Raj Rakolia, and before I begin, I would like to say thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me today. I'd like to make this as brief as possible. I am a newly graduated student, successfully completing pharmacy school in May of 2020 at the University of Pacific in Stockton, California. Shortly after graduation, I mailed off my application for the postgraduate state board exams. The application was received in May, successfully processed in May, and eventually denied in October. To date, I have received very little correspondence from the Board of Pharmacy regarding this matter.
Excuse me, I would like to interject. If this commenter is talking about a specific matter that is with the board that may still be pending with the denial of the license, this is not the appropriate forum for this conversation. And I would instruct the board members not to make any comment with respect to the any type of any merits or anything else. I don't know if Ann wants to jump in, but I'm sorry to cut you off. But if there are certain cases that will come before the board, then it's important that those not be discussed prior to the appropriate time.
This is Ann. I would just request that the commenter please reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next comment comes from Warden Awaz. Warden, I've sent the request to unmute your microphone.
With the pizzas not working
We can hear you.
movement. And I agree with the statement made by Dr. Lani Duong and Sean. I currently work at Rite Aid Pharmacy as a pharmacist, where conditions are so poor, I fear not only for my own health, but for the safety of all my patients. Pharmacists are expected to do 12-hour shifts, sometimes with only 1 to 2 technicians the entire day, while working at a COVID testing site and while giving shots every 10 to 20 minutes. I have never been able to take my required second lunch without jeopardizing the safety of the patients or leaving the pharmacy understaffed. If I go for lunch, the technician or clerk staying behind can't leave the pharmacy to use the restroom or grab something off the shelf outside for a patient. Without a team, our ability to deliver excellent patient care is crippled, including providing consultations, filling a medication on time, and providing vaccines safely without injury to self or the patient. These expectations for one person to complete the tasks that would normally be done by 5 different people, along with no time afforded for rest, is unsafe for the employees and therefore unsafe for our patients being served. Additionally, I have been placed as the only employee several times during shifts with no chance to rest, sit down, or use the restroom. Despite long wait times and patient and customer complaints and patient switching pharmacies due to staffing issues, there has been no decision on the part of corporation to add extra staff. I'm pressured to lie and say I have gone on breaks because my district leader has called to reprimand me to not report that. I am constantly being forced to choose between helping patients, sacrificing my own health, and breaking company policies and labor mandates on a daily basis. Our jobs are literally killing us. Rite Aid has not put patient or employee safety first. I am
15
exposed.
seconds.
These poor working conditions put me and my health at risk. Please help me and other retail pharmacies keep our oath and our BOP mission statement to protect the health of our patients. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next commenter is Danny Martinez. Danny, I've sent the request to unmute your microphone.
President, members of the board, Danny Martinez with the California Pharmacists Association. I want to echo a lot of what was said with this group, hashtag pizza is not working. CPHA has been in active discussions with this group and with other groups. We heard earlier this morning during the med error reduction and workforce committee about these challenges. I've made those comments repeatedly. Now you are hearing directly from pharmacists. We fully support the agendizing of these items at these committees that were asked, and asked that the committee do so. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I do not see any other requests for comment. Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. Thank you, Shelley, and thank you for all the commenters. We really appreciate it. We hear you. I please invite you all to please submit as much information as possible. Please speak up. Please voice here and participate as much as you can. We do hear you, and we are trying to do what we can to do what we can. Also, having received public comment, I'm gonna go around our members to see if anyone would like to say anything or anyone would like to include anything on the agenda. I have just been opening up for a discussion, so anyone can just jump in. But our new member, Kula, actually bring interesting suggestion, and I really would like to give it a shot so that we don't all speak on top of each other, just in case. We're usually a quiet group anyway, so it's not a problem, but just in case. So I'm hoping, Shelley, if you could just walk our members really quick through raising hand feature. So if you want to say something, I ask you to just raise hand and say it. And if you are not familiar with it, you can just still speak up and we'll figure it out. But Shelley, if you could just walk our members through raising hand feature. And so if we can try that out today.
Okay. To raise your hand, if you hover your mouse over your name, you'll see yourself listed in the panelist list on our participant panel. If you hover your mouse over your name, you'll see a small hand icon appear next to your name. If you click on that, it raises your hand. And then when you're done speaking, you can click on it to lower your hand again. And for you, President O, if you look next to the search bar at the top of the participant list, you'll see 2 reverse arrows. If you hover over those, you can sort the list by hand raise.
Yep, I got that already. And I saw a lot of people raise hand and raise their hands down. So I'm not sure if they meant to just play with it or not, but I'm gonna
to do that once again. I didn't.
go ahead. Go ahead, Shelley.
Yes, if you put the pointer of your mouse over your name, you should see the hand icon pop up next to the right side of your name. And then you can just slide your mouse over and click on that hand icon and it will raise your hand.
Don't see that. Oh, I see raise hand. Okay.
Cheryl, and it's not a big deal if you're not.
There you go.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So
did you see my hand?
I got it. We saw it.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if we're trying it out or not, but I see Nicole's hand raised. I also saw Maria, Jigs, and Kula's hand all go up. So I'm gonna just make sure.
I was just testing it out.
Good.
I put my hand back down.
Got it. Okay. So I think it's just Nicole. Go ahead, Nicole.
Hi. Yes, thank you. I just wanted to direct some of the commenters to the Medication Error Reduction and Workforce Committee that we started this morning, and just letting them know that that might be a good place to do the work, and where we're looking at a lot of the things that they brought up today. So that's all. Thank you.
Great. Perfect. Anyone else have any comments? Cheryl, go. Go ahead, Cheryl. Debbie. Go ahead, Debbie.
I was just going to say, Nicole, do you have a date for your next meeting?
Yes, the next meeting will be April 20th.
That was it. Thanks.
And I would also like to say to some of our speakers to spread a word amongst your colleagues that we are trying to look into that as well. Cheryl, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to echo what Nicole was saying about the meeting that we had this morning, and I'm glad Debbie went on to say when it was, so that we can have that input in our next meeting.
Thank you, Cheryl. Maria, go ahead.
I lowered my hand because it is the same comment as everyone else's. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Got it. Okay. So we're moving on to agenda item 3, approval of board meeting minutes. Included in the meeting material are draft minutes from the October 27, 2021 and December 2nd, 2021 board meetings. As we begin, I will first ask for questions or comments on the draft minutes from the October 27, 2021 meeting. When you speak, please remember to identify yourself prior to making your comments, or if you have any, if you're willing, you can please make a motion to approve the minutes. Members, go ahead, Debbie.
President O, I would make a motion to approve the October 27, 2021 board minutes as presented.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that was Ricardo or Jake.
I raised my hand. I think Ricardo seconded. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Ricardo. Jake, do you want to say something?
No, I was just raising my hand. Second.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. With a motion and second on the floor, I will now open the discussion for public comment on the October 27, 2021 draft minutes. Moderator, please open the lines as appropriate.
This is the moderator. We've opened that Q&A panel. If you'd like to comment on the October minutes, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type comment into the text field, and submit that to our panelists. Seeing no requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
It is
With a
closed.
motion and second and public comment received, I will now take a roll call vote. Members, as a reminder, please open your line before voting. Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. Jake Patel.
Yes.
Thank you, Jake. Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl. Shirley Kim.
Yes.
Thank you, Shirley. Kula Koenig.
Yes.
Thank you, Kula. Ricardo Sanchez. Ricardo.
I'm sorry, I said yes.
Oh, thank you, Ricardo. Nicole Thibault.
Yes.
Thank you, Nicole. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you, Debbie. And I vote yes, the motion passes. The next draft minutes for our consideration are from the December 2nd, 2021 meeting. Members, when you speak, please remember to identify yourself. And also, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Cheryl, your hand is up there, so I'm just going to see if you would be willing to make a motion there.
I would like to make a motion.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Jake. Appreciate it. With a motion and second on the floor, I'll now open the discussion for public comment on the December 2nd, 2021 draft minutes. Moderator, please open the lines as appropriate.
This is your moderator. If you'd like to make a comment on the December meeting minutes, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type comment into the text field, and submit that to our panelists. And seeing no requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. Thank you. With a motion and second and public comment received, I will now take a roll call vote. We're just going to start with Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. Jake Patel.
Yes.
Thank you, Jake. Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl. Shirley Kim.
Abstain.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Shirley. And Kula.
Yes.
Thank you, Kula. Ricardo Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you, Ricardo. Nicole Thibault.
Yes.
Thank you, Nicole. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you, Debbie. And I vote yes, the motion passes. Okay, moving on to agenda item 4, discussion and consideration of board approved regulation, Title 16, CCR section 1793.5, 1793.6, 1793.65, pharmacy technician application, including consideration of public comments received during the 45-day comment period. Next for our consideration is adoption of the board's regulation, section 1793.5, 1793.6, and 1793.65 related to pharmacy technician applications. I trust you had an opportunity to review the meeting materials. The materials include the proposed text released for the 45-day comment period and staff recommendation. I do agree with the staff's recommendation and would appreciate member comments. We have previously received information regarding the high deficiency rate among pharmacy technician applications and believe any changes to the application form that would assist applicants in understanding the requirements are appropriate. I would appreciate comments from members and would also entertain a motion if deemed appropriate. I note the meeting materials as well as the meeting slide include possible motion to incorporate the staff recommendations and initiate a 15-day comment period. Members, anyone have any comments or would like to make a motion? Debbie, go ahead.
Hi, Song. I would be happy to make the motion as displayed on the slide
Thank you.
move this forward. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Anyone second for Debbie?
This is Jake. I'll second it.
Thank you, Jake. Appreciate it. Okay, any other member comments? Okay, hearing none. Moderator, with the motion on the floor, please open the line for public comment.
This is the moderator. If you'd like to request a comment on the motion before you, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type comment into the text field, and submit that to our panelists. Seeing no requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. Thank you. Okay, with a motion and second and public comment received, we're going to take a vote. Maria?
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. Jake Patel?
Yes.
Thank you, Jake. Cheryl Butler?
Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl. Shirley Kim?
Yes.
Thank you, Shirley. Kula?
Yes.
Thank you, Kula. Ricardo Sanchez?
Yes.
Thank you, Ricardo. Nicole?
Yes.
Thank you, Nicole. Debbie Veal?
Yes.
Thank you, Debbie, and I vote yes. The motion passes. Moving on to agenda item 5, discussion and consideration of board-approved regulation, Title 16 CCR Section 1708.1, notification of temporary closure, including consideration of public comments received during 45-day comment period. Next, for our consideration is the adoption of the board's regulation, Section 1708.1, related to notification of temporary closure. I trust you had an opportunity to review the meeting materials. The materials include the proposed text released for the 45-day comment period, comments received, and staff recommendation. After review and consideration of the materials, I agree with the staff recommendation and would appreciate member comments. I would appreciate member comments from members and would also entertain a motion if deemed appropriate. I note the meeting materials as well as the meeting slide include possible motion to incorporate the staff recommendations and initiate a 15-day comment period. Members, any comments? I would imagine there will be some comments on this one. If not, anyone willing to make a motion? Debbie, go ahead.
Yes, Song, my comment is I reviewed it, also looked at what the staff, their response to the comments we received, and I thought, as you did, I thought that the staff handled them appropriately and made the necessary adjustments. So with that, I would like to offer up the motion that is before us on the screen.
Perfect.
This is
Thank
Cheryl,
you.
my second.
Thank you, Debbie, and thank you, Cheryl.
Comment?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Maria.
And maybe I misunderstood. Debbie commented that the public comments had been responded to in the language. So I was kind of confused because comment number 1 does say that the staff does recommend amending the language, but I don't see that amendment.
Isn't it, I thought it was incorporated in the revised version.
I thought the amendment was the changing to 4-day.
If you look at the board staff recommended modified text, I thought that they addressed it there.
I see that in the recommendation, but I don't see that in the text that's on page.
It's on page 8.
I'm sorry, I just don't see it. The language I see that we're voting on is the attachment.
Well, look at the underline. It says a temporary closure shall not include a routine closure, including weekends or state federal holidays, unless that exceeds 4 consecutive calendar days. Isn't that what I thought? That's what they said.
Right.
Thank you for clarifying. I was on the wrong version. Thank you.
Okay. Well, no, thank you. Thank you for bringing it up because we don't want to mess this up. So thank you. Thank you for the question.
Exceeds 4 consecutive calendar days. So I think that's sufficient to cover businesses. So any other member comments? Okay, with that, moderator, please open the line for public comments.
This is the moderator. We've again opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to comment on the motion before you, please click on that Q&A icon, type comment into the text field, and submit that to the panelists. And seeing no requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. Thank you, Shelley. Okay, with a motion and second on the floor and public comment received, I will call for the roll call. Maria?
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. Jake?
Yes.
Thank you, Jake. Cheryl?
Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl. Shirley?
Yes.
Thank you, Shirley. Kula?
Yes.
Thank you, Kula. Ricardo?
Yes.
Thank you, Ricardo. Nicole?
Yes.
Thank you, Nicole. Debbie?
Yes.
Thank you, Debbie. And I vote yes, but I see Maria's hands up. Did you mean that, Maria? Did you want to say something or no? Okay. All right, the motion passes. Moving on to agenda item 6, discussion and consideration of board approved regulation Title 16, CCR section 1715.65, inventory reconciliation, including consideration of public comments received during 15-day comment period. Next for our consideration is adoption of the board's regulation section 1715.65 related to inventory reconciliation. This has been a long journey and I applaud all of you for hard work. I trust you had an opportunity to review the meeting materials. The materials include a proposed text released for the 15-day comment period, comments received, and staff recommendations. After review and consideration of the materials, I agree with the staff's recommendation and would appreciate member comments. I also want to highlight that there may be some misunderstanding about the requirements of the regulation. I would encourage stakeholders to read the proposed regulation and note the differences where reconciliation reporting is required versus activities only. I would appreciate comments from members and would also entertain a motion if deemed appropriate. I note the meeting materials as well as the meeting slide include possible motion to incorporate the staff recommendations and to initiate another 15-day comment period. And Maria, go ahead. I know you worked so hard on this, so go ahead and share your thoughts.
Thank you, President. Well, I appreciate your clarification also as part of the introduction. As part of the enforcement committee that's worked on this language for several years, even before my tenure on the enforcement committee, this was started. It's been a long road, and so I am pleased to ask the board to accept the motion as on the screen. That's what my motion is.
Thank you, Maria. Anyone have any comments or second for Maria?
This is Cheryl. I second. Agree. It's been a long time.
Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl. Anyone have any comments before we go for public comment? Okay, with that, moderator, please open the line for public comments.
This is the moderator. We've opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to comment on the motion before us, please click on that Q&A icon on your screen, type comment into the text field, and submit that to our panelists. Our first comment comes from Mark Johnston. As a reminder, you will have 2 minutes for your comments. And Mark, I've sent the request to unmute your microphone.
So my name is Mark Johnston, and I represent CVS Health. For the new board members, I am the former executive director of the Idaho State Board of Pharmacy, so I understand the time, effort, and emotion it takes to volunteer as a board member, and for that I thank you. If you have not had the opportunity to read my comment letter on this topic, I request that you read it in full as it addresses more than just this rulemaking. I want to thank the board staff for suggesting changes and a delayed implementation date pursuant to my comments. I'd like to request that the board reconsider their stance on a physical inventory of the contents of an ADDS. On the 1st of this year, the type of facilities that are eligible for an ADDS are greatly increased, but CVS Health is likely to retain e-kits in most of these facilities as opposed to replacing them with ADDS because of the inventory reconciliation requirements. I think we are all of the belief that ADDS increase public safety when compared to e-kits. Therefore, I again speak to the balance within California proposed law. I believe that exempting all ADDS physical inventories, as hospitals and now correctional pharmacies enjoy, actually increases public safety through decreased e-kit use. Please reconsider by sending this effort back to committee. Thank you for your opportunity. Thank you for this opportunity to comment.
Thank you. And not seeing any additional requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. Thank you for the comments. Okay, with a motion and second and public comment received, I will call for the vote. Start with Maria.
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. Jake?
Yes.
Thank you, Jake. Cheryl?
Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl. Shirley?
Yes.
Thank you, Shirley. Kula?
Yes.
Thank you, Kula. Ricardo?
Yes.
Thank you, Ricardo. Nicole?
Yes.
Thank you, Nicole. Debbie?
Yes.
Thank you, Debbie. And I vote yes, the motion passes. All right, so the agenda item 7 is the presentation on standard of care provided by the Office of the Attorney General. As I announced at the beginning of this meeting, due to unforeseen circumstances that arose following the posting of the agenda, the presentation will not be provided today. We look forward to all interested stakeholders attending the first standard of care ad hoc committee meeting on March 9th of 2022. We look forward to seeing you there. Agenda item 8, update on the multi-state pharmacist jurisprudence examination audit performed by the Office of Professional Examinations. As you may recall, as part of the April 21 board meeting, we voted to request an audit of the MPJE to determine if it was appropriate to use in California. Before I introduce Dr. Montez, I would like to ask counsel to briefly review some of the rules of the road that will guide our discussion. Eileen?
Thank you, President O. And board members, I just wanted to go through a few points, particularly for the new board member. Business and Professions Code, Section 139, declares that occupational analyses and examination validation studies are fundamental components of licensure programs. Section 139 requires occupational analysis and validation studies of exams used for licensure in California to ensure fairness and fitness for use. The Office of Professional Exam Services, which we refer to as OPS, is the internal resource for this type of evaluation and development for the Department of Consumer Affairs. The board contracted with OPES to conduct the occupational analysis and validation study on potentially replacing the CPJE with the MPJE. OPES received the information needed to conduct its review and reach its overall conclusions. However, to obtain the information necessary for OPES to conduct its review under California law, it had to sign a stringent non-disclosure agreement with the NABP. Under the terms of this non-disclosure agreement, OPES is limited in the information it can disclose in a public forum, such as this meeting, including the reasons underlying some of its conclusions. The board will be meeting in closed session as listed on the agenda of this meeting to consider, along with disciplinary matters, the preparation, approval, grading, or administration of one or more licensing examinations after the public meeting. Because of this non-disclosure agreement, and because the board will meet in closed session after Dr. Montez's presentation, we will not proceed with member comment during the public portion of this meeting and proceed with public comment. The board will then proceed to closed session.
Thank you, Ms. Smiley. I would like to welcome Dr. Tracy Montez to present the findings of the audit performed by the Office of Professional Examination Services. Before Dr. Montez begins, I would also like to extend the board's gratitude to Dr. Montez and the staff within the Office of Professional Examination Services, who have recently also performed audits of the NAPLEX and CPJE examination, as well as assisted the board with the workforce survey. Thank you so much, Dr. Montez. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, and thank you, President O and members of the California State Board of Pharmacy for this opportunity to present and also to have conducted the audit or review of the multi-state pharmacist jurisprudence examination. On behalf of the Office of Professional Examination Services, or OPS, specifically Ms. Durham-Perez and Dr. Linser, I will be presenting the findings here. Please note, though, that I am a trained psychometrician. I am the former chief of OPS, and I did work very closely with OPS on this project. Next slide, please. So my overview this afternoon is going to include some information about the Office of Professional Examination Services. I know we have some new members on the board, as well as for our audience that may be listening to the presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit about the laws and standards and guidelines that govern the work we do at OPS, as well as the purpose of the review, the psychometric evaluation component of that review, as well as the content evaluation. I will also briefly discuss the multi-state pharmacist jurisprudence exam, give you a brief description of it, and then some overall findings and conclusions. Again, please remember that OPS is bound by a strict non-disclosure agreement, which will prohibit me from sharing a lot of details to support the conclusions that I will eventually get to. With that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Office of Professional Examination Services. We are a professional consulting firm within the Department of Consumer Affairs. We provide consulting services with regard to the development and validation of DCA's boards, bureaus, and committees. Some of our boards and bureaus, we actually develop and administer their exams, and others we do consulting work with. So it does vary on the services that we provide. We also guide our work based on legal requirements, professional and technical standards related to licensure exams, and we do this as an objective and independent entity. So although we are housed within the Department of Consumer Affairs, our work is independent of other forces, and again, we do comply with those requirements, guidelines, and standards. So let me talk to you about those laws, standards, and guidelines. First of all, we have Business and Professions Code Section 139. Now, although this is unique to California, it is based on the standards for educational and psychological testing, as well as the principles for the validation and use of personnel selection procedures. So Business and Professions Code Section 139 was established because the legislature felt that it was important for DCA's boards and bureaus to adhere to those very important guidelines and standards. And so although, again, this is specific to California, it's based on national testing standards. So whether we're talking about a pharmacy licensure exam in California, or a clerical exam in Kansas, or a firefighter's exam in New York, these testing standards are applicable in terms of the standards and the principles. Again, Business and Professions Code Section 139 is based on that. As you heard earlier from the board's counsel, it requires boards to complete timely occupational analysis to make sure that the exams that they use are fair, valid, and legally defensible. And I'm happy to share with you that your board has a long history of complying with Business and Professions Code Section 139, which we greatly appreciate at OPS. The next slide, please. So the purpose of this review was to look at evidence that supports the use of the MPJE scores for making pharmacist licensure decisions in California. And there's two components to this review. One was a psychometric evaluation that is evaluating the methodology that the National Association of Boards of Pharmacy uses to develop, administer, and score the NPJE in relation to those professional guidelines and technical standards. A content evaluation was done to determine or evaluate whether critical California-specific entry-level competencies would be testable under the nationally uniform NPJE content outline. So let me just share those findings with you briefly before I go into the psychometric evaluation. As far as the overall findings, and again, I'm going to restate these later, but I want to state them now prior to going into the next slide. So overall, OPS found sufficient evidence of the validity for the use in California in 3 general areas: test development, test administration, and test security procedures. And I'll talk more about those in the next slide. Insufficient evidence of validity for use in California, though, was found in 2 very critical areas. That was the occupational analysis methodology and the standard setting methodology. So with that, let's look at each of those components briefly in terms of the psychometric evaluation on our next slide. Thank you. So when we look at our psychometric evaluation, there's several components of an examination program. And we look at the documentation and the data for each of these areas. Each one must provide a minimum level of evidence to support the use. And it's very important because this is what makes it possible to have reliable decisions about your licensure examinations. So the first area that we look at is an occupational analysis, the methodology. Sometimes occupational analysis is also called job analysis, task analysis, or practice analysis. But it is a methodological study that evaluates the work that is performed in a profession. So here we're looking at pharmacy. Of that snapshot in time, we're looking at things that are performed frequently, things that are done with great importance, and we take a snapshot in time of what is done, and that can be done through a survey, it can be done through focus groups. There's different methodologies. So we evaluate how that is done, and then from that, we get what's called a content outline or an examination outline, and that evolves into the next step where we're evaluating procedures for developing the examination. Although we would often like to test everything there is possible in a profession, we know that that's not feasible. So we have to take those most critical competencies. We formulate an exam plan, and that becomes the basis for our test. And within that, we look at how test questions or items are written, how they are formulated in terms of the weights, what areas are more important to evaluate versus other areas. Again, looking at what is really critical for entry level into the profession. And then with that is how is it scored? You know, how do we score the candidates on the exams or the applicants? That again also goes into our third area where we're evaluating the standard setting procedures and passing rates. Standard setting can also be referred to as a cut score or a pass point. Again, with licensing exams, we are looking at entry level. What is the minimum competence that an individual must achieve in order to sit for an exam and then to practice into the field or the profession? Now, often minimum tends to make people think, well, we're talking about a C. No, it's not, or average. It's everything that an individual must do within that profession to be competent and practice safely, do no harm to their clients or their patients. So that standard, again, when you think about the schooling, the training, the experience, it's quite a bit of requirements that must be achieved. And so we want our passing standard or standard setting process to reflect that. We also look at the history of passing rates. There's no magic passing rate. In fact, our standards tell us that we are not allowed to gatekeep or set arbitrary pass rates. Technically, you could have 100% pass rate if every single candidate was competent. However, we know that that is not the case. It's just not a reality. So we do expect to have some fluctuations in passing rates, but we don't want significant fluctuations. That tells us that our exam is not reliable. So that's some of the data we look there. The fourth step is looking at administration and score reporting procedures. How is the test given? Is it written, computer-based? Is it essay, multiple choice, those kinds of things? Are there proctors? Are there security and things involved, which I'll talk more about later? Is there transparency in how you take your test, how you receive your score? Is there information provided to schools or not, or to the board? Again, we want to make sure that things are done fairly and efficiently. And then finally, we look at exam security procedures. When that exam is being administered, are there protocols in place to maintain the integrity of the process? We don't want exam subversion. We don't want cheating. That defeats the process of having a license. And so it's important that we look at those pieces as they're related, not only as you take the test, but even throughout the process when you're writing test questions and items. So that's really an overarching piece of this. But essentially, these are the components that we look at. This is a very high level description of what we're doing, but each of these components have very specific standards and guidelines associated with them. There's research, methodology, and so forth that we follow, because the goal is to ensure, as I have said before, is that we want a fair, legally defensible, and valid exam process. And just as we want to protect the consumers and patients, we also want to make sure that we do not establish any artificial barriers to licensure. So those are the areas that we looked at in terms of the psychometric evaluation. The next slide, the content evaluation, that's kind of the next phase, the end phase that we do. And that's where we take a look at the national examination content, or here is MPJE content, and we look or link it to California practice. We bring in subject matter experts who are licensed, actively practicing individuals who are in good standing, and we facilitate, our test expert facilitates a discussion among these individuals looking at these two exam plans or content outlines and making a determination as to whether or not critical areas, entry-level areas of California practice, are they assessed or not. If you look at the next slide, and this is again very common with our audits that we do of other examinations, you'll see that we have OPS recommendations on the next slide. Thank you. And these are, again, possible recommendations that can be made when we are looking at this linkage or this overlap. And we like to use the Venn diagrams because you can get a sense of the degrees of overlap. If you've got two examinations that have significant overlap, then we would basically say that you might have the California law examination and a national examination for the majority of your content. If you have a mid-range of overlap, then again, we may suggest using the national examination with a California law and practice examination that is supplementing maybe areas or content that's missing in the national. And then our other extreme here is where there's very little overlap between the national and the California exams, and that's where we would tell our board or recommend that you stay with a California examination. So again, this is just an illustration of how that linkage process works and really what our ultimate goal is. And so again, that's part of the content evaluation. Next slide, please. So here I just wanted to put some information about the MPJE. It does assess candidates' knowledge of laws and regulations specific to each state or jurisdiction that uses this exam. It's computer adaptive, approximately 2.5 hours. It can be taken for each jurisdiction in which licensure is sought, and it includes 120 items with 100 scored 20 pre-tests. And the pre-tests are what we would call practice questions. So that's just a little bit of information about the exam itself. The next slide, again, goes over the overall findings. So if you recall when I talked about the different steps in our psychometric evaluation, we did find some evidence to support the validity for test development and scoring procedures, test administration and score reporting, and test securities. So these were some areas of strength that we found. However, we did find insufficient evidence of validity for use in California for two areas, the occupational analysis methodology and the standard setting methodology. And these are extremely critical areas because the occupational analysis is essentially the foundation of the exam. It is really what everything else is built on. And so while there were procedural strengths in the other areas, the way in which the supporting foundation was established for this exam is not suitable as far as OPS is concerned and in review of those professional standards and technical guidelines. The same can be said for the standard setting methodology. It does not adhere to those standards and guidelines that we would utilize in setting a passing score for a licensure examination. And so based upon these areas, OPS does not recommend that the board implement or move forward with utilizing the multi-state pharmacist jurisprudence examination at this time. It would be inconsistent with the law, Business and Professions Code Section 139, which again is based on national testing standards and guidelines. So with that, I will conclude my presentation and thank you again for your time and look forward to closed session in which I will be able to elaborate more based upon the non-disclosure agreement that I am bound by.
Thank you, Dr. Montez. I understand that because of privacy rules, details into the analysis may not be shared. Following public comment, we will convene in closed session as included on the agenda and consistent with the provisions of the government code to further discuss this issue. We understand that there are items that cannot be discussed because of the non-disclosure agreement required by the NABP to allow OPES staff to gain access to the sensitive examination materials. Also, Ms. Smiley, before we open up to public comment, are there any additional items you would like to remind us about?
Not at this time, President O, for the public portion of the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Smiley, and thank you so much, Dr. Montez. Moderator, please open a line for public comment.
This is the moderator. We've opened the Q&A session. If you'd like to comment on the presentation, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type comment into the text field, and submit that to our panelists. Our first comment comes from Keith Yoshizuka. Keith, I've sent you a request to unmute your microphone. And as a reminder, you'll have 2 minutes.
Oh, I usually get a message. Can you hear me?
We can.
All right. Keith Yoshizuka, chairman of the board of directors for the California Society of Health System Pharmacists. I speak in opposition to adoption of the MPJE. According to the board's own statistics for 2021, the pass rate for the CPJE from California schools is 61.5%, compared to graduates, applicants from out of state which was 46.8%. Think about that, 61.5 versus hair less than 47%. That's a big difference. And in as much as President O reminded us all at the beginning of the session that the primary goal of the Board of Pharmacists is protection of the public, that's a big gap. And I would also remind everyone that the CPJ is not just a law exam, it's practice standards and jurisprudence. And this is particularly important when in viewing it in relationship to the passage of AB 1533, which allows every licensed pharmacist in the state of California to engage in a collaborative practice agreement. So that practice standard alone makes it significant that California pharmacists are practicing at a different level than those from out of state. So again, I reiterate CSHP's position to retain the CPJE. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Our next comment comes from Daniel Robinson. Daniel, I've sent the request to unmute your microphone.
I believe I'm unmuted.
You are.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to comment. Number one, medicine, both allopathic medicine and osteopathic medicine do not use a state exam, qualifying exam. They use USMLE and COMLEX for and those are both national exams. So I don't think every health profession has to have a state administered exam. I'd also like to mention that occupational analysis is something that is done by NABP on about every 4 or 5 years. They do a survey to conduct an occupational analysis. So those surveys are done. And when it comes to MPJE, there are 49 different standards that are evaluated, 49 different practice considerations that are looked at. And of course, MPJE utilizes testing information that's provided by state boards of pharmacy. So they work in conjunction with them. So if there's something that should be in MPJE, it can be added along in conjunction with the state board of pharmacy. I just find that the comment that, of course, they use the same psychometric testing procedures that are required by OPES. And that would be the standards for educational and psychological testing. NABPLEX has already been approved by OPES for California licensure. So you've already said that the occupational analysis was sufficient for practice in California. So I don't understand why a law exam would all of a sudden it would no longer be sufficient. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. And not seeing any additional requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. Thank you, Shelley. All right, so I would like to thank members of the public today for your participation. As indicated on the agenda, the board will now convene in closed session. Adjournment for the day will immediately follow closed session, and there will be no other items of business discussed. Members of the public, thank you so much for joining the meeting today. We will reconvene tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Members, we will go on a closed session. think we are ending a little bit sooner than we anticipated. So I'm going to have Ann Sodergren confirm the time that we will be joining the closed session. Ann?
If we could begin closed session at 2:30, please.
Okay. All right, members, we have 20-minute break and we will see you at the closed session. The link was sent to all of you and we will see you there at 2:30. Thank you all.